Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. My name is Andrew Claudio, a.k.a. GMAC, and it is time to preview another Knicks matchup, this time on Wednesday night, deep in the heart of Texas. I actually don't know if San Antonio qualifies as the heart of Texas. I'll get a Texas expert on in just a second to tell me whether or not that was an ignorant New Yorker thing that I just said. But regardless, the Knicks look to continue their winning ways, surprisingly without Jalen Brunson, against the San Antonio team that comes in at 29-38, I believe is their record. It might be 28-39 on the season. Made a pretty significant blockbuster move during a time when a lot of blockbuster moves would be made. In fact, if this move was made last year during the trade deadline, it probably would be the poster move of the trade deadline. But when Luka Doncic and Jimmy Butler also get traded, it ends up being just one of the big moves. But De'Aaron Fox was traded to the Spurs about a month and a half ago. And then, unfortunately, Victor Wembanyama went down for the season. So the pomp and circumstance of the Christmas Day game is not the same, that's for sure. But the Knicks do head to San Antonio to take on a young Spurs team, Chris Paul, Stephon Castle, and a bunch of other cast of characters that, if you're a basketball fan, you've definitely heard of and we'll get to see tonight. And joining me to talk about this game, where the Knicks do need to take care of business, but we'll see how much of a fight this Spurs team still has. Returning guest, last time I saw him was Christmas Eve, and he was so nice to join me during his Christmas Eve. And now he gets to spend the day before March Madness with me again from the Corporate Knowledge newsletter on Substack. Please check it out. Even though I'll just say this, Matt, they've gotten a little less. They're less punchy in the sense of like, oh, the team is interesting. There's transactions going on, and now they're playing out the string. Matthew Tynan, welcome back to Knicks Film School.
Yeah, definitely playing out the string a little bit. It's really funny. Like, it's kind of an ongoing joke because I keep bringing it up to my subscribers, talking about it with folks in chats, but they're only 2 games out of the play-in the loss column. Because the bottom of the West is just falling apart. I mean, the Mavericks are the number 10 right now, but we all know that they're basically the walking wounded at this point. Phoenix is a mess. Portland started losing again. They would have lost to the Raptors the other night had Toronto not just taken every single good player off the court with a 6-point lead.
That was insane. That was an impressive display of tankery.
Drove a tank onto the court in the fourth quarter. So like it's funny we have this ongoing thing. Hey, they're still in it, and look, they keep playing the guys that they have available at this point. So it's not like once the ball goes into is thrown in the air that they're not trying. But yeah, no Victor Wembanyama. De'Aaron Fox has elected, both he and the Spurs and his doctors elected to get this surgery done on his finger. Greg Popovich isn't returning this year, so a little bit of the luster has been lost on a season with a lot of expectations. And by the way, yeah, sure, San Antonio is the heart of Texas. It's technically like South Texas, but it's right in the middle. If you drive about an hour and a half north of San Antonio, you're like smack dab in the middle of Texas. So sure, deep in the heart of Texas, man.
I do need that education. It's been well documented this season when I've talked to different cities, how very little about not the coast that I know. And it's very much that the flyover states are things that I just point of ignorance, unfortunately. So yeah. I do know there's a river that goes to the middle of the country. I believe it's called the Mississippi. I do know,
Andrew,
that
you gotta
somewhere around
horizon,
Texas is like there's 4 states that you could technically stand in all at the same time around there. I know there's Vegas is over there somewhere. Regardless, what I do know is that one of the attractions in the middle of the country was Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, when the news dropped, I think the collective NBA world took a step back just to. Look, when you hear blood clots, the name I went to was Chris Bosh, and
right.
That was a career-ending injury. And we all did our Googles. We all waited for the sports doctors to say what they said, and it does sound like he's going to make a recovery. But from both the behind the scenes in the organization standpoint and the fan base standpoint, what was that moment like for San Antonio? And then like, what is it now as we're like, okay, like we're hoping this is an issue that goes away eventually and never comes back. Like what
Right.
is the mood within both the fan base and the organization with this Wemby situation?
Yeah, so leading up in the weeks leading up to the announcement or the discovery, I guess, something had been off with Victor. And this is, and I should preface this by saying this is kind of me making an observation. The team kept it very specific in terms of he felt some pain in his shoulder upon returning from All-Star break, and they discovered the deep vein thrombosis, and that was that. They shut him down, but something just hadn't seemed right from a visual perspective, from a conditioning perspective, and I don't want to get into all that, but because it's me opining more than anything. So I would just say that me personally, when something like that came out, it was like, man, something about this makes sense, even if they're not making the direct contact. But I think that just in general, you don't see deep vein thrombosis in a 21-year-old very often. So there is a bit of a shock there, and obviously major disappointment and scary times when you talk about a condition that, had it not been discovered, could have led to something more serious like a pulmonary embolism, which is literally life-threatening. So you kind of go through these stages of reactions where it's shocking, then it's scary. You're wondering literally about his future as a basketball player. And then San Antonio comes out and they're very optimistic about the fact that they believe this is a one-time thing, that he's going to make a full recovery. You start to see instances. You bring up Chris Bosh. Their situations are different. The more similar situations that are actually more recent are Brandon Ingram and Asar Thompson. Both guys with similar conditions, discoveries, and are both back in the NBA. Well, Brandon Ingram seemingly never plays or has like the worst sprained ankle you've ever seen in your life. But other than that, these guys are back on a court. They're healthy. They're not affected by the blood clots anymore. So when you hear San Antonio and their doctors, obviously they've gone incredibly in depth with this stuff. This is the future of their franchise, and they are very optimistic. So once everything settles down, you see Victor with the team. You see him even flying out to, like, when De'Aaron Fox made his return to Sacramento, he went out there to support him, be with his new teammate, be with the team. We weren't expecting him to fly anywhere. I was even told, like, they were hoping that he'd be able to fly with the team late in the season. And here he was a couple of days later with the team in Sacramento. So I think it went from obviously shock to very scary to, all right, we think he's doing okay, and we're going to trust that what the Spurs say is true, that he's going to make a full recovery and be ready to go for next season. And in the meantime, like, he's going to be able to, it's just the contact stuff that you can't do when you're on the blood thinner. So he's going to be able to work out. He's going to be able to work on his shot, things like that. So he should be ready to go to start next season.
I speak on behalf of the entire, I don't want to say most of the Knicks fan base, maybe not the entire Knicks fan base, but the majority of the NBA world, that we're all hoping that it continues in this optimistic direction.
Sure.
Which, look, I actually didn't get to tell you this story. So Knicks play the Spurs on Christmas. I did our post-game show, so I went back to my apartment here, and we went live on YouTube. Thrilling Knicks win. Oh my God, Miguel Bridges. And obviously the Wemby show was on full display for 3.5 quarters. I showed I explained what happened when I went back to my in-laws, and I was telling my wife, yeah, Knicks won, but Wemby went nuts. And she tried to explain to my mother-in-law, who doesn't know anything about basketball, just knows her son-in-law does this, and is like, there's a thing he does on the internet. I think it's on YouTube, but trying to explain what Wemby is to her, I showed her the picture of him blocking, I forget if it was Kuminga or Andrew Wiggins, but the shot from the preseason, his rookie year, where the ball is at its apex and his Wemby's arm is extended and he blocks the shot, and just trying to explain what this was and her awe and like, wait, what? This is in the NBA right now? Like, what is this? It was a telling. It was a moment for me to see how the league can market itself to the casual basketball, even not even fan, but like, this is how you market your sport. Like, hey, there's this thing you have to see on the court. And I had a moment of, oh no, I hope that doesn't go away. It does sound like it's going in a much different direction. Now, 2 weeks earlier, the Spurs also went in a different direction with trading for De'Aaron Fox and pulling the trigger on a move like that. Now, the last time you were here, we talked about whether they recognized their window had been accelerated because of what Wemby already is. And obviously with the rest of this season, what pick they might get, what have you, like there's some variables there. So there's a question I ask just about everybody with what does a disappointing end to this season look like, which this, I don't think you can ask that of the Spurs this year. So I'll ask it about next year. What does a disappointing 2025-26 look like to the Spurs now that they've started to move in the direction of, like, right now is the time? Like, this is beginning to open our window.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a disappointment if, like, again, this is all contingent on Victor being healthy, right?
Let's continue with the optimism. Yeah, he's back. De'Aaron Fox is back. Everybody's back.
So, I mean, I think a disappointing result would be them not making the postseason. I mean, I am talking like at minimum play-in next season. It's so long as everyone is healthy. I think that even had they waited until the offseason to start making moves, that would have been the case. Because, like, this type of movement was coming. And it was I think, a couple of weeks prior to the deadline, had you asked me, I would have said, you know, they're going to want to do this in the offseason. They're going to want to do this in the summertime. That's typically how they operate. The transition would be a little less clunky for a lot of different reasons. But then you have De'Aaron Fox's camp and Clutch kind of coming out publicly saying he wants out. He wants to go to San Antonio. That's the list. It was like, okay, all right. You know, your hand is almost forced in that situation. The tricky part was like, okay, well, Chris Paul's still in the building. You know, we don't know exactly what our draft picks are going to look like coming up. We don't know where we're going to land in the lottery, all this stuff. So there is uncertainty. The Spurs had this idea of like, we're not giving up Steph Castle. We would really rather not give up Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, like these guys that they've been building around for years now. Like, they wanted to keep as much of their core together as they could. They wanted to add to it, not like take one out and replace that guy with a De'Aaron Fox. Like, of course, De'Aaron Fox is an all-star. He's a better player than all of these guys, a more proven commodity than these guys. But San Antonio really they wanted to add rather than like replace.
Mm-hmm.
And here come the Chicago Bulls, always ready to be helpful without getting too much in return. Although, shout out Trey Jones and Zach Collins. Those guys have been actually playing really well for Chicago. But they come in with the Levine contract. San Antonio has to give up a number of draft picks, but none of their like truly valuable ones. They don't have to give up the 2030 Mavs. They didn't have to give up any of the unprotected Hawks picks. They still have Sacramento later on in 2031, I believe. So the picks that they really deemed valuable, they got to hold on to. And then in the meantime, only having to give up Trey Jones and Zach Collins in the deal, it worked out about as perfectly as they could have asked for without it being a summertime kind of deal. So getting De'Aaron in the building, you know, familiarizing himself with the guys that he's going to be playing with moving forward, I think was also a big deal for them. Go get that funky pinky fixed, man, because it is all bent. He's had to tape it up every night so the ball doesn't hit his pinky before it hits anything else on his hand. So they'll, in an ideal world, they'll be ready to go next year. I don't think that they're necessarily done with the transaction. We'll see how the draft goes. They're going to have 2 picks that, depending on where Atlanta lands, they're going to have 2 picks in the top half of the draft, maybe even 2 picks in the lottery. We'll see, but I don't think they're quite done building this team at this point. I know they're not done building this team at this point. So I think that anything less than a postseason appearance next year would certainly be a disappointment if everyone is healthy.
So it only took me 3 sims on Tankathon, but I've got the Spurs getting the number 1 pick officially.
Okay.
Yeah. With Brooklyn. Shout out across the river. Brooklyn gets the number 2 pick with said Toronto Raptors getting number 3. So poor Washington. And
yeah.
Probably the funniest outcome of all this is, and what I'm hoping happens on lottery night, the Philadelphia 76ers drop to 8th, which means their pick goes to Oklahoma City. Yes. Yeah.
I have too many Philly friends, man. I don't want that to happen to them. I just can't. I can't.
I can't relate. I unfortunately just have fallen into this very fun season where Brooklyn is like, despite themselves, they're like fun and competent and good. And
yeah,
they're like avoiding the best. Like they're not Washington, which is what they thought they were going to be going into the season. Right. Philly's in shambles. Miami's in shambles. Like it's very much me showing up to the funeral to make sure I can laugh at my enemies, while the Knicks are on their way to a 50+ win season. So unanswered questions about this roster. So the rest of the season, like they're going to play the Knicks tonight, and like you got Stephon Castle getting a lot of usage at the moment. You got Vassell. Like I'm just going through the box score of the night against the Lakers. You've got Champagnie, you've got Jeremy Sochan, you got Keldon Johnson, you've got all these younger players. Before I ask about them, am I allowed to be confused by Chris Paul still on this team? Like why he didn't ask for a buyout? I know Fred Katz did that story earlier in the year that he just wanted to go someplace to play. But do you know if like there was any conversation about him going to a contender and he turned it down, or was that never in the cards?
No, I don't think there was too much conversation about it. When he was brought to San Antonio, it wasn't just to play basketball. It was like he and Harrison Barnes were brought in to like show these guys how to compete, how to be professionals. And I think he's just been tremendously valuable to them all season and continues to be. He's still in that there's that Chris Paul honeymoon phase before he starts wearing on people. And all these young guys, like they still really value everything that he brings to the table. The team values it a ton. So it was one of those situations where it was like, okay, if he wanted to go somewhere, the Spurs would have probably made it happen. But the Spurs were not going to be the ones actively pursuing something unless he wanted it. And it, at the time around the trade deadline, I think there was a lot of excitement. This was pre-Wemby situation. You just acquired De'Aaron Fox. Like you're kind of right there on the bubble of the play-ins picture. So at the time, like I think it was full speed ahead. Let's see what we can do. And then prior to the buyout deadline, they're kind of in a similar situation. Like they're trying to compete. And like I said, they're still kind of right there somehow. But no, I don't get the sense that it was ever really close. I don't get the sense that that the Spurs were pushing for anything. Like I said, they really have valued everything that he's done for them this season. And I don't get the sense that he was wanting out. I think that while everything that's happened this season has been, I'm talking everything from obviously like Greg Popovich suffering a stroke, Victor Wembanyama, deep vein thrombosis, now De'Aaron Fox out for the season to get that pinky repaired. Like it has gone just in the complete opposite direction than anyone would have hoped or wanted or thought it would. So at this point, I think, Chris is playing out the string with the rest of these guys. And I never really got the sense that he was like ready to bail or go play for a contender. I think he just wanted to continue to play with these guys and see what they could do.
I forget the name of I'm looking it up now to try and see if I can remember the name of it, but the veteran that the Sixers signed, Yaron Weitzman's book, Tanking to the Top, where he talks about after the Jahlil Okafor had that public incident, right in like the first month or two of his rookie season. And Coach K calls the NBA and is like, what is going on? I just, this kid that I just invested in, for coaching for a year, we're sending him to your league. And this is him on a team with no guidance, no veterans, because of everything going on with Hinkie, and just like, I just need to be as bad as possible this year. And the Sixers signed a veteran to just like, let's show you. It might have been Elton Brand, to be honest. And it was a second point guard that I'm blanking on. And I just remember reading that and it really crystallizing the importance of vets like that on younger teams, that it's fine if you want to be bad or specifically develop, rebuild, like all these words that we used to use before tank became a thing or processing became a thing.
Right.
And it sounds to me like Chris Paul, one of the better veterans you could potentially learn from, Harrison Barnes as well. They play that role on this Spurs team.
It's about the professionalism. Like every young team is going to go through a lot of losing, but it's like it's the day in, day out stuff. And whenever you talk to the young guys, and the Spurs have had a couple of vets over the last few years, like the guys like Doug McDermott and Devontae Graham, and you can kind of go down the line with these sort of role players, but they haven't had these like starting caliber, like future Hall of Famer. Harrison Barnes is a champion. You haven't had these guys in the locker room, and so what you hear from the young guys is just like the day to day of it all, the professionalism, the minutia, the attention to detail in everything that you do, and no question, like they needed that. You saw this team. They all had the right intentions. All of these guys are professional, but like the habits, the attention to detail, the little things that just weren't translating to solid, competent play, especially like late in games when every possession is so high leverage. You weren't getting the results that you were hoping for, and a lot of that just comes down to preparation, experience, like all of this stuff. And Harrison Barnes and Chris Paul have been excellent for them, just on a daily basis, teaching them, showing them by example how to be a pro. And that's what San Antonio was truly hoping for. They were hoping to be competitive, and while everyone was healthy, they were relatively competitive. And I mean, like a play-in chase was definitely in the cards, but and this is just all kind of, it's been an unfortunate season. But again, despite the losing, you can still learn to create these habits, to form these habits, these processes that you go through. And I think that Paul and Barnes have been just critical for them in that regard.
It was Elton Brand and Ish Smith.
Man.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There you go.
Shout out to them. So the remaining younger players that are here did play a competitive game against well, you tell me how competitive the loss to the Lakers was the other night. Competitive-ish. Speaking of Ish Smith. Against the Lakers the other night.
It's about as competitive as you can be if you're in LA. Luka Doncic is on the
Lakers. I have to keep saying that when he's on the Lakers. Yes.
It's really wild. They didn't really stand much of a chance. They hung around for a while, and then it was just kind of like, just didn't have enough firepower to match with those guys. And then once you get Austin Reeves starts cooking, like yeah, you're kind of done if you got that addition.
That's right. No LeBron. Luka went 5 for 20, and Austin Reeves. They still won by 16 with Austin Reeves getting 30 points.
Yep.
So I'll ask the question every Knicks fan wants to know about this Spurs team.
Okay.
What's the path to them upsetting them? Because I think every Knicks fan operates this way. That's like, at least from experience doing this for a couple of years, it's like, who's the guy that's going to go off that we're not used to, like that has never gone off before, but it's going to do it against my team. And basically it's like when it's looked the best without Fox, without Wemby, since they went down, how is it looked? And is that a formula that could work against the Knicks team without Jalen Brunson?
So the thing about San Antonio, since in the month of March, and then depending on what site you're looking at, you have a site like Cleaning the Glass that takes out garbage time. San Antonio has had the best offense in the NBA in the month of March. And again, depending on which site you go back to, it dates all the way back to the All-Star break. What they're doing in the absence of Wembanyama is they're trying everything they keep in mind. Bismack Biyombo is basically their only big man right now, and he's 6'8", and he wasn't even playing in the NBA before the Spurs signed him, after the deadline. So take that into account here. But what they're doing is really trying to be active, like overly active on the perimeter on defense, trying to force turnovers, get out and run in transition. So if the Knicks are to lose this game, it would be because they're turning the ball over too much, and it would be the Spurs get hot. It's like a Julian Champagny gets really hot from the perimeter coming off the bench, or it's Harrison Barnes gets hot. I think if you're a Knicks fan and you pay attention to the Spurs at all, like, that Devin Vassell is going to have the ball in his hands. If you're unfamiliar with Stephon Castle, get familiar with him, because he's also going to have the ball a lot. Keldon Johnson is actually having one of the most efficient stretches of his career right now. He's playing great off the bench. Sohan is going to come in and do Sohan things. But to me, if there is going to be an upset, because basically anyone who watches the Spurs at this point has basically become resigned to the fact that they're going to give up 1 million offensive rebounds. The Knicks should be more than capable of racking up the second chance points. But if they start turning the ball over and the Spurs start getting out in transition, and you have Sohan and Castle and Vassell getting to the rim, and then you have guys like Champagny hitting like 6 threes or something like that, or Harrison Barnes going 4 for 5 from the perimeter, and you look up and suddenly the Spurs are up 12 or 14, like, that's where the Knicks are going to get in trouble, if the Spurs are able to get out and run and start hitting a bunch of threes.
So I have a bone to pick with you. Now, you did answer the question correctly. Like, when it's looked the best, how will it look, and how Knicks fans, if they're worried, should look at this. This is number 1 offense in March. I've got the stat in front of me. But what you didn't say is they're last in defense. That's
they're last in
defensive rating.
They're last in defense. I absolutely meant to include that. This is where the second chance points, they've been getting absolutely killed on the offensive glass. And so I know the Knicks they're not like at the very tippy top in terms of offensive rebounding, but I know they're probably a top 10.
Well, okay, top 5. So I have to now get rid of all the filters. They're top 5 in March.
Okay.
That's that.
So
they're top 10. They're number 10 in offensive rebound percentage. Yeah.
Okay. So like guys like Cat and Mitchell Robinson is
Josh
back.
Hart,
and Josh Hart, of course, flying around. Like, they're going to get their offensive rebounds. That actually is probably one of the more critical areas for the Knicks. Like, you just got to go crash the glass. It might open up some more transition opportunities for San Antonio, but like, they are so depleted from a rebounding perspective. They're playing Jeremy Sohan as the backup 5 at this point, and he works his butt off. Like, all credit in the world to that guy. But, they are just really struggling to keep teams off the glass. So that's going to be, if let's just say that the offense without Brunson isn't firing on all cylinders, you're gonna have chances to to correct that on the glass against San Antonio.
I'll say this. What's been a thorn in a lot of Knicks fans' side this season is the way Tibbs has deployed Precious Achiuwa. There was a long stretch when Anunoby got injured, that the month of February, where Precious Achiuwa was the starting power forward, and teams were just ignoring him, especially playing him next to Josh Hart.
Yeah.
Over long stretches. I thought there's the stretches now where Tibbs is going to Mitchell Robinson, Precious Achiuwa, Josh Hart lineups. So there's just like no spacing whatsoever.
Yeah.
We're just ignoring that. However, the way that they're trying to win the possession battle with the backup minutes while Jalen Brunson is out, it leads to a pretty good defense. They've kind of resorted back to the Tibbs principles from the beginning stages of his Knicks tenure, where it was a lot of offensive rebounding, a lot of the winning the possession battle, like you said. And then it becomes matchup dependent. So the other day they play Miami, who's got Kel'el Ware out there, Bam, obviously,
right.
This version of Jaime Jaquez, and like a team could put out 3 non-shooters at a certain point, and it's not going to hurt you. It sounds like it's matching up with them again, where as long as they don't turn the ball over, and right now they're operating with Deuce McBride and Josh Hart kind of alternating the point guard duties, that this actually is the game to play Precious Achiuwa, not as a starting four, but if your backup minutes are just very heavy rebounding, very big in general, that the Knicks should be able to take care of business tonight with no scares.
Yeah,
with the caveat of what you said about what their offense has been, the Spurs offense has been.
As long as they convert on those extra possessions and opportunities, then like they should be fine. Where, like I said, when they do get in trouble is anything that allows the Spurs to get out and play in transition, run up and down, get their offense moving quickly at a fast pace. Like if you start playing to that style, it might get you in trouble. The Spurs typically do shoot better at home and play much better at home. So it's going to be about being patient, waiting, just kind of consistently ramming the gate until it just sort of crumbles. But don't turn the ball over. Keep those extra possessions, and you should be okay against San Antonio. Just don't mess around with coughing the ball up and not converting on the opportunities, the extra opportunities that you do get.
Knicks fans, any PTSD that you came into this pod with? I have no idea if I helped or accentuated it. I have no idea if this was a good or bad pod conversation for your PTSD about tonight. But I'll say this: the Spurs are 4-6 in their last 10. In the month of March, but also their last 10. So this isn't a team that you can just walk in and just show up and win. Yeah. Chris Paul, obviously, this is obviously the Spurs culture, we'll call it, now that Heat culture's dead. Last question. Sorry, I had to. It's
okay, man.
I'm enjoying it entirely too much. The other night was very fun. Okay. Last question. I just from a Knicks fan that might not have the latest update. What's the latest on Coach Popovich?
Yeah. They're very, very private, as is he, about everything Greg Popovich. I know that ESPN just had like a whole team of people working on a story on Pop that they were vetting for a long time to make sure they had all the right details. I thought it was great. Michael Wright and Ramona Shelburne did a good job with that, as did all their team that was working on it. He's doing well from a health perspective. He has been pretty clearly leaving the door open to returning to coaching. You asked if you had you asked me a couple of months ago if this was it, I probably would have said yes. Now I'm not totally sure. I think the important thing though is that he is in good health. His recovery is going well. It's so crazy, I was talking with someone the other day, like if this was my dad at 76 years old and you just suffer a stroke and you talk about going back to this high pressure demanding job with all this travel and getting into hotel rooms at 3 a.m. and this intense night in, night out, the commitment that it is. Like I would just be, pleading, with him to say, you've done enough, that you've had this incredible career. It's time to hang it up. But Greg Popovich has often called coaches sick puppies, and I'm sure his family is probably the plea that I just mentioned. They've probably been doing that. I have no idea. This is just me talking, but I do look back at what Pop said a couple of years ago as Victor was coming in. He said, my job at this point is to prepare these guys for when it's time to win, that they're ready to do so with whoever it is that's leading them there. And so I wonder if he feels as if like the job isn't done yet, that it ended so abruptly that he feels that he would like to be there for another year to essentially finish the job. And the way he dedicates himself to this and remains true to his word and all of this stuff, like, it wouldn't surprise me anymore at this point if he came back for at least another year to like I said, finish the job. And he's earned that right, no question. Like, it's everyone in the organization would tell you, like, this is his job until he doesn't want it anymore. So and more I'm starting to lean toward, believing him that he wants to come back and that he's going to come back for another year or so. But again, that's all something that we don't know the answer to. I don't even know if he knows the answer to it at this point. It's a storyline that will certainly be kind of, I don't want to say hanging over their heads, but like it'll be there. It'll be present over the course of the offseason until he specifies or gives a direction. But until then, the important thing is, like, he's in good health and doing well. I think that's the more critical thing in all of this. And so for that, I know that everyone is grateful. And it's been weird. Like, one night he just didn't show up to his press conference and his pregame press conference. And that was the last time any of us have talked to him. So it's been kind of crazy, just out of the blue, him kind of disappearing. And it would be great to see him again, get popped a few more times, be told that we have really stupid questions, or did you stay up all night thinking about that one, or, whatever the case might be. I think we would all enjoy to experience that again, enjoy experiencing that again. But a big question remains for sure going into next year.
Yeah, obviously you wish him the best.
Yeah.
Whether you're a Spurs fan or not, if you're just a general NBA fan, if you're just a person,
a human being.
Like if you have any empathetic part of your being, you wish him the best. I would like to see Coach Popovich just on the sidelines again at some point. It's one of those people that's been in my life since I started watching basketball. Unfortunately, my first basketball memory is one of the happiest moments of his and one of the worst moments of mine. So hopefully we could, I would love if next year we're talking Pop on the sidelines of the finals against the Knicks and just completely rewriting a memory in that sense.
It'd be fun. It'd be fun.
Matt, thank you so much for joining me for another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. Before you get out of here, please let the fine folks at home know where they can find you and all of your work.
Yeah, you can find my work at the Corporate Knowledge Newsletter. It's matthewtynan.substack.com. That's the written part. And if you want to listen to me talking to a microphone even more, it is at the Small Market Bias Podcast. Either one of those places, or you can just find me talking about things on Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever.
Check out the newsletter. Obviously, I subscribe to it. I recommend it. Check out the pod because he told you to, even though small market bias doesn't exist. Isaiah Hartenstein just left the Knicks to go to the Thunder. So that was the end of small market bias forever. Okay. That's just, I'm declaring it dead. I'm sorry to inform everybody. Small market bias is officially over. And the NBA killed it. Okay, that's my 2 cents.
So
there.
sorry for your New York Knickerbockers and everything that you once owned in the NBA. You and the Lakers and the Celtics and the Bulls.
Oh no, Lakers bias still exists. Don't get me wrong.
True.
That's a thing. Kobe's former Nike rep just traded them Luka.
It's true. You're right.
I'm not saying that doesn't still exist. But as far as the big market, small market thing, the CBA killed any bias that could potentially happen. Otherwise, we'd be the Yankees over here. I guess now we'd be the Mets because they're now the big
right. Yeah, you can't even say the Yankees anymore. Crazy.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much, Matt, for coming. It's always good to see you. I look forward to if it's Knicks Spurs on Christmas next year, then I'm sorry, but we're just gonna have to link up again on.
Yeah,
Christmas
we got to
Eve.
do it again. I hope that they do it again. That was too much fun. It would be great to see another Victor versus the city of New York, and maybe he'll go play chess again afterward. Wasn't
that great? Yeah, that was
cool.
so cool. Yeah. Matt, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you to everybody for tuning in to another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. If you dug it, head over to iTunes, 5 stars, review. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel. Now that we're past 20K, help us on the road to 30K. Why not? A quick announcement for those that we haven't fully publicized this yet, but please join us this Saturday at T-Squared Social when the Knicks take on the Washington Wizards. We are breaking this watch party curse this Saturday, folks. The Knicks will take on the Wizards. I believe the game's at 7. You see the March Madness logo. We will be watching the NCAA tournament as well. I'll be there around 5 o'clock. So if you want to join me, bring your brackets. We could watch all the games together. I'm not going to pretend I know who's playing. I just know there's a lot of games on Saturday. You should come and watch them at the best place to watch the tournament in New York City. I'll be back with another pregame pod tomorrow at 10 a.m. because we want to make sure all of you can get to watching the tournament uninterrupted by Knicks Film School. So we'll preview the Knicks game against the Hornets tomorrow bright and early at 10 a.m. But until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the game tonight, and I will speak with you soon.